Let's begin with NBC News senior White House correspondent Gabe Gutierrez, NBC's business and data correspondent Brian Chung, and Ernie Tedeschi, the director of economics at Yale's Budget Lab and former chief economist in the Biden administration. Gabe, the president has called the job numbers rigged, which appears to be his reason for firing Erica McIntyre. But has the White House actually provided any evidence to back up this accusation?
Good morning, Anna. No, it hasn't. Now, yesterday on Meet the Press, the president's top economic advisor, Kevin Hassett, tried to make the case that this was necessary because the administration wanted to put somebody in that was one of the president's own people for, quote, more transparency. And they have tried to make the argument that this was the largest revision in these job numbers. And we should point out jobs numbers are revised very often, and especially now with the uncertainty surrounding the president's tariffs rollout. Perhaps no surprise that these numbers would have been revised quite like this. But Kevin Hassett was interviewed by CNBC earlier this morning, and he doubled down. Let's listen.
As an economist, I like to go for what I can prove, and what I can prove is that the data have become very unreliable. When the revisions are bigger than the number itself, then you know you got troubles.
And so earlier this morning, the president posting on social media himself, reiterating that in his opinion, he believes the whole system is rigged. You see it right there. And he's trying to make the argument that the numbers were rigged right before the presidential election, when there was a revision in the jobs number after President Joe Biden dropped out of the race. So the president continuing to push this forward. And yesterday he told reporters that he planned to name a replacement in the next 3 or 4 days. Anna.
So, Brian, let's talk more about why this all matters. Give us an understanding of how policy is affected by these jobs report. How is that data used more broadly when it comes to making economic decisions?
Yeah, and to answer that, I think we first have to talk about how the jobs report is put together in the first place. So basically, the way that the government assesses how many jobs were added in a given month is that they phone call households and they'll say, hey, are you working? If not, why not? And then they also call businesses to see if those numbers match up with each other in what they call the establishment survey. So they actually have a very comprehensive survey of over 600,000 work sites, and they ask them, hey, how many people did you hire over the past few weeks? How much did you pay them? How long did they work? Those numbers are then used by a number of other agencies and private sector folks that then index, based off of data that they have, certain types of other measures. So the Federal Reserve takes a look at these numbers to decide what they want to do with interest rates based off of the health of the labor market, Social Security, ways that U.S. business cycles are assessed. Are we in a recession? Poverty levels, other economic trends. So this is seen as the gold standard of data on the labor market. And that's the reason why it's such a big deal that if the president does put into place another BLS commissioner that changes the methodology or maybe even retires the entire data set, that would be something very alarming within the entire economics community. JP Morgan, I think, said it best in a note that they released over the weekend. Having a flawed instrument panel, this is their words, a Wall Street bank, can be just as dangerous as having an obediently partisan pilot. That's a big reason why this is such a big deal. Firing the statistics head isn't something that maybe regular people would understand as something that would have ripple effects into their daily lives. But imagine if all these other agencies, which make policy decisions based off of these reports, if they're flying blind, so are all those other agencies.
Absolutely important. Ernie, you have pointed out that, in fact, the BLS reports have gotten even more accurate over time, not less. And I want to show viewers this chart that you shared on X to make that point. Explain here what we're looking at and why are revisions just so common? Why is it so hard to get it accurate on the first go?
Yeah, sure. So remember that what BLS is doing is they're measuring employment in the world's largest economy, one of the world's largest labor markets. It is a very difficult thing to do. And, they literally have hundreds of statisticians and economists devoted to getting it right. What this chart is showing is it's showing the percent revision in the level of employment from the very first estimate that we got to the very final estimate that we got after all the revisions have been incorporated. And as you can see, while there are ups and downs and wiggles and jiggles, averaged over time, it's gotten more accurate. And that's because you have an entire agency devoted to getting this as right as possible. It's never going to be perfect on the first go around. And there are lots of, I think, productive conversations to be had about how to make the process better. But look, like what we got, the revision that we got on Friday was a relatively large revision in terms of the number of, payroll employees that were changed, but it amounted to less than 0.2% of total employment in the United States. So, relative to what we've seen in the past, it was a relatively small revision.
What can you tell us about McEntarfer's reputation, and what message did the president send by firing her?
Yeah, so I worked with her closely at the Council of Economic Advisors. She was on detail from Census at the time. She was a lifelong civil servant. And Erica was one of the most data-focused economists that I've ever met. She was perfect for the job of BLS commissioner because she doesn't care about politics. She doesn't care about telling people what they want to hear. She was always within the Council of Economic Advisors, where she was detailed, willing to speak truth to power and give superiors bad news when it came. And look, remember, the Bureau of Labor Statistics produces the Consumer Price Index as well as the jobs numbers. So, in the Biden administration, we got a lot of data that we didn't like from BLS. But we never shied away from, telling, members of the cabinet, telling the president the hard news when it came in. And there was never talk about firing the commissioner or changing the messenger because we didn't like the message. Erica was perfect for that role. She's a very rigorous and data-focused economist, and is the type of person that members of either party should want to be in charge of that agency.